Hi everyone,
and welcome to another episode of ITT Podcast, which stands for In This Together Podcast. Our podcast is our honest take on relationships, love, and marriage, with the aim of sharing our views and experiences for you to take from it whatever you need.
So whether you're single, dating, in a relationship, or happily married, there is something in it for you.
Hi everyone! Today's episode is all about intercultural and interracial relationships, and we'll be exploring dating a different culture or race. Now, this can sometimes be controversial, and it can sometimes just be something people are really passionate about and want to see more of across the world. We're going to give our 2 cents on the topic, so let's kick it off.
Let's go. So let's start by setting out why we've decided to discuss this topic.
Yeah, so I think as our world becomes interconnected, so do our relationships, and eventually so will our marriages. So people from diverse backgrounds are finding themselves drawn to each other, and this is not just about race, it's also about cultures, ethnicities. It's important to talk about it because as you're dating and as you're thinking about who you're going to end up being with and getting married to, you are likely to come across this as a situation in terms of potentially dating someone from a completely different culture or completely different race. So we want to kind of give our 2 cents on it and talk about some of the challenges you might face and some of the things that you could do to help yourselves navigate it and just give our opinion, really.
Yeah. But before we do that, let's look at some of the definitions.
Yeah. So let's start with interracial because that one's a lot more straightforward. So what does interracial mean?
Interracial means existing between or involving people of different races or ethnicities.
Yeah, and that's the Cambridge Dictionary definition. So throwing in the word ethnicity there was quite interesting to define interracial. Yeah. There's other things that I think we need to kind of clarify when we're having this discussion, because I think what gets confused a lot is the difference between race, ethnicity, nationality, and tribe. And so we think it would be great for us just to define those 4 different things, because those are some of the things when you're thinking about cross-cultural or cross-racial relationships. Yeah. So first of all, race. The concept of race relies on separating human beings on their physical differences. So the most common and first way of separating human beings is varying them in terms of their skin color. And that's what race is all about. So black, white, in the past, red, yellow. It was like a color spectrum thing, right? So race is definitely a social construct. It is not something that has always been there.
Yeah. So I'll talk about ethnicity.
Yeah.
Ethnicity refers to a group that shares a common ancestry. Usually a group that speaks the same language. Ethnicity is different from race in that people of many different ethnicity can belong to the same race. For instance, white Europeans belong to dozens of different ethnicities.
Yeah. They all be part of the same race, but different ethnicities. And ethnicity refers to cultural characteristics. And I think that's what's quite specific about it. Things that can distinguish groups of people, even in the same race, amongst each other. So language, religion, accents, fashion, food, all of that stuff really plays into ethnicity, including things like customs and hairstyles as well. So ethnicity is probably the broader one, and it's harder to kind of pin down. But if you think of a black person, for example, you can be black across different ethnicities. So your ethnicity could be black African, you could be black Caribbean, so there's different ethnic groups. Yeah. And the same thing with white people. You can be white Scottish, you could be white Italian, you could be white
Swedish,
Irish. So there's different ways of breaking it down. Tribe is an interesting one, and we wanted to throw that in, being African ourselves. Tribe comes in a lot amongst Africans. And tribe tends to be a way of breaking down ethnicity groups even further. So you could even have a black African from the same country, so like a black Nigerian, so a black African Nigerian, but their tribe would be different from another Nigerian.
Yes,
So you'll have
Igbos, the Benin's, and Hausas,
Yoruba and all of that. So there's different tribes. And amongst Congolese people, you have Bangala, you have Bakongo. So there's all these different tribes within them. And they tend to be different in terms of the language they might speak, the food they eat. They're different in terms of
how they behave,
their lineage. There's a lot of blood ties as well in terms of tribes. And sometimes even religion is a big factor in tribes.
And how they approach relationships as well.
That's right.
Varies,
And nationality is the easiest one, right? Nationality refers to a person's citizenship.
Yes. In other words, a citizen of a particular country has that country's nationality. So being British, being Swedish.
You love Sweden.
Stop it.
No. I'm fine with it. I just love it because it's like you go straight to Sweden. And have you even been to Sweden?
I've never been to Sweden. But it just Sweden. I like yellow.
It just rolls off the tongue.
I like yellow, so I like Sweden. So
you like IKEA.
I like IKEA very much. So getting back to what we're saying, many countries base their nationality laws on ethnicity. Which is interesting.
Yeah. Others base it simply on the fact that a person was born in that country. So, for example, being American, you're born in America, you're considered American by nationality. But some other countries like the UK, you have to be naturalized if you're not born there or you don't have parents that are born there. I think you have to be naturalized even if you are born there in the UK if your parents weren't born there. So they're kind of talking, it's all kind of lineage based.
It's a bit deep.
Yeah, but nationality is simply the relationship you have with a specific country.
Yeah.
The kind of legal relationship you have with that government, that state, that country. And it's normally a legal obligation to a particular country. It's not really about your race.
Your
or your tribe. So we just thought we'll break that down because when we're talking about intercultural, we're talking very much about relationships that cross ethnicity lines and tribes. We're going to touch on race, but our expertise or our experience, should I say, is not very much on race because we are not in an interracial relationship. We can give our advice based on what we think and the way society seems to operate today when it comes to interracial relationships. But a lot of it is going to be our kind of high level views when it comes to race. But most of what we're talking about in terms of intercultural applies to race as well, because if you're dating someone of a different race, you are definitely dating someone more likely from a different culture as well. So
the challenges are similar.
They're going to be cross-cutting challenges. So it's still going to be relevant and helpful. And then we might touch on race a little bit, like we said, but not in depth and in detail. But so let's rattle off some statistics. We were looking at some statistics for this and it was really hard, wasn't it?
It's hard. Particularly looking at statistics from the UK, which rarely had anything.
Yeah, there wasn't much statistics on interracial dating. Or even intercultural. The UK census is carried out every 10 years. And we had here in the UK, the census carried out in 2001, more recently, 2011. And then there was very recently the 2021 census carried out. But that was hindered by the COVID-19 lockdowns, which affected the whole world. So the statistics for that, I don't think have actually been broken down enough because when we looked that up, there wasn't anything specific about interracial or intercultural dating, but there were some figures in terms of the 2011 statistics, which is, I appreciate, quite a while ago, but that is the most recent statistics.
So what does that statistic show us?
So those statistics show that 9% of people in England and Wales were living as part of an inter-ethnic couple in 2011. This is an increase of 2% from 2001. So clearly from 2001 to 2011, there's been about a 2% increase. But like we said before, we don't really know what the figures say for 2021 because that hasn't been kind of released as a percentage in terms of interracial, intercultural. And it's interesting anyway that it refers to it as inter-ethnic couples.
Not interracial.
Yeah, so it's all about ethnicity in the UK in that sense. But there was a BBC article in 2018 which spoke about interracial couples and found that only 7% of relationships in England and Wales are interracial. This is probably due to the fact that there is a very small percentage of England and Wales, even Scotland, that is ethnic minority anyway. The majority of people in England, Scotland, Wales are going to be white people, and they are. So there's just not that big percentage anyway. So this is representative of that. But yeah, about 7% in 2018 from that BBC article, but that is not census figures. So I think we still need to wait and see how the 2021 census figures break that down.
Yeah, the 7% is pretty low.
Yeah.
And that's the UK. What about the US?
Yeah, the US one was quite straightforward. I mean, they referred to it as interracial marriages.
Yeah, they had quite a lot of information on that.
Yeah, and it was a higher percentage.
Yeah, it was 19% as of 2019. The number of interracial marriages as proportion of new marriages has increased from 3% in 1967 to 19% in 2019.
Yeah, and that goes to show it's quite a significant increase from the 1960s. But interestingly, marriage between two people belonging to different races in America only became fully legal in 1967. So 3% in 1967 is understandable if it was illegal prior to that, and it's kind of been growing ever since. In the UK, there's never been a restriction legally against marrying between races, but obviously there's been social attitudes and social deterrence from marrying interracially. Yeah. So that's the stats, that's the figures. 19% from in 2019 in the US, about 9% in the UK in terms of inter-ethnic, and nothing really specific about interracial. But I'm guessing it's hard to know what the inter-ethnic covers specifically.
Yeah, it wasn't broken down.
It wasn't broken down.
Yeah.
And there's not that much anyway in terms of race and ethnicity when it comes to marriage in the UK.
Why do you think that is, though, in terms of in the UK stats? Do you think it's something that's not important?
I don't know. I'm actually surprised because I think the UK is very aware of race. Race does play a factor in a lot of different things. So it's interesting that there isn't regular statistical information about that. I think it's to do with the UK likes to avoid explicitly breaking people down into race. And maybe that's why it's not there as a statistic. And I mean, if you take into consideration the fact that it's never actually been explicitly illegal, why do you think?
I think because it's never been restricted in the UK. So I think the UK government has never considered it as something that's important that they need to pull information on, because it's never been an issue from a government point of view. So remember, these are like the ONS is from a legal point of view. But obviously, as you said, society has treated it slightly different.
Yeah. And there's definitely an understanding that there's inter-ethnic couples. Yeah. And that was pulled in the 2011 stats. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So let's dive into some of the challenges.
So essentially, what do we think are some of the common challenges faced when dating outside of your cultural race? This is the bulk of the discussion, really, isn't it? Common challenges. So Frank and I are in an intercultural relationship.
Yeah.
Because even though, are we in an we're
in an intercultural relationship? Yeah. Because obviously, even though we're both from an African lineage, we're still from two different cultures. You being Congolese, myself being Nigerian.
Yeah.
Two very different cultures.
Yeah. And I think to the outside world, we're both Black Africans, and they wouldn't really think that we face any cultural challenges.
Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah, but we do, and there are definitely things that show us that we're not from the same culture on a regular basis. There are definitely challenges, and some of these challenges can kind of go across the board for anybody else in an intercultural relationship or in an interracial relationship. So we're going to talk about some of that and what our thoughts are on how to kind of best navigate these situations. I feel like we always say the word navigate in this podcast.
Yeah.
Everything's about that.
We like the word navigate.
Everything's about navigate.
Life is about navigating.
Yeah. And relationships are all about navigation.
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first one, what are some of the common challenges faced when dating outside of your culture? So you, Frank, you did not marry a Nigerian girl.
No, I did not.
You're not serious. You didn't marry a Nigerian girl. Let's go with you first.
I literally married outside of my culture. And I must say, it has definitely opened my eyes.
Is it?
Merging both cultures, the Benin tradition and the Congolese tradition. So bringing both cultures together. There has been some challenges, I would say.
Yeah. Like what?
Well, I'm just thinking, like, obviously the two different cultures coming together, trying to understand each other and how. Because I remember a traditional wedding.
Wait, are you talking about the traditional wedding? Or are you talking about the introduction? Because the introduction before the wedding.
The introduction was what I was talking about. Yeah, the knocking. We call it the knocking.
The knocking, yeah. That's when you first, for anybody who's not even African, or not versed in this, but basically it's like when you get engaged. In African tradition, most African traditions, and so this is where it's kind of cross-cutting. We have the similar tradition. The man's family comes to the girl's family, so it's called the knocking because they come to knock to introduce themselves. We call it introduction in Congolese culture, and they come to introduce themselves, but normally they will come with an elder.
Yeah.
And so that, like, Frank came with his uncle, and they'll basically come to say. He came with his uncle and his mom and his sisters and, his family. And you're coming to the girl's family to say, we're interested in marrying your daughter, which is so sweet. It's not a wedding. It's not an engagement. It's not even considered. It's an engagement at the end of it.
It's a form of respect.
Yeah.
For the girl's family. It's one of the ultimate respect that you can pay to the family. Especially the father of the girl. Actually, it's because some people, they get together and you could come through the back door. You understand? When I talk about the back door, you can be seeing someone, you can be seeing a man's daughter, but not formally introduce yourself. So this is why we call it the knocking. You're coming through the front door, so you're literally coming in to say, hello.
Yeah, that's what's up.
I'm Frank. We're interested in your daughter. We want to marry your daughter. So it's a very important tradition.
Yeah, and we have that in common, which is really cool.
Cool, yes.
So you're saying that a traditional engagement, that knocking, that introduction
was the first time both families came together.
I know, and it was such a
it showed the richness of both cultures coming together, but it was the first time the family had come together.
So what did you notice about it? Like, what was interesting to you about that knocking, that introduction with that Congolese and Nigerian?
The excitement from both families. From both families,
it was expressed very
differently. Yeah, from our side, we were just happy to be there. We're happy that you guys accepted us because I've heard of knockings in the past where the family they've been rejected because they did not agree with the boy marrying the girl. That can happen.
Yeah,
it can happen. So you guys accepting us, we were happy, but you guys were also very happy to have us come, going through the right process, because in your culture that is the right way to
do it. Yeah.
So, but it was bringing the cultures together that was really interesting for me. But I knew there was going to be challenges down the line, but I didn't realize how much of a challenge it would be, because it was quite a challenge, I would say. Because the only thing I knew about Congo, I knew where Congo is on the map. And watching African Nations Cup, I see Congo play on the matches. That was it. That was all I knew about Congo and the rivers of Congo, and knew all the stats of Congo. Yeah, I knew all of that, but I never met anyone from Congo. And yes,
so I was the first person.
You were the first person that I met that's Congolese. So yeah.
I mean, if we're thinking about the fact that you're Nigerian and you basically dated for ages a Congolese girl and then eventually proposed, what happened for you to end up dating a Congolese girl? Was it something that you purposely did, or what did you not care who you ended up with? And like, how did that come about, and how did that make you feel the fact that, okay, when you realized that we were actually going to be getting married and stuff, that, you know, you wanted to get married to me, that I wasn't Nigerian and all of that stuff from your perspective?
From my perspective, I did not want a Nigerian girl.
Oh, man.
Okay, I'll rephrase that again. From my perspective.
No, can't say that.
From my perspective, I wanted an African girl.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wanted an African girl. That was my preference. That's what I preferred. But I did not mind where in Africa they came from. As long as they were African.
So why do you feel like you didn't want a Nigerian girl? Because that's
well, I preferred a non-Nigerian girl because I felt like having a Nigerian girl would have things too close to home. Things would be a bit too close to home in terms
of. What were you trying to hide?
No, I wasn't trying to hide. It's the family involvement in your relationship, in your marriage.
That was the same reason. Well, anyway, we're talking about you.
It's the family involvement in the relationship. So if I married someone from my tribe, you know, a Benin girl, then the family are just in your business because both families literally come together. There is no separation because we're both from the same tribe. If I married another Nigerian girl, say a Yoruba girl, we're still Nigerian. So that element of being Nigerians is still there. So there are certain traditions that are like intertwined. So, you know, as a couple, it's hard to separate from that. It will be hard, you know, family members will be heavily involved in your relationship and in having a say in it. So marrying someone out of your culture, literally, you know, like a Congolese or Kenyan, it brings it's a refreshing approach. It's, you know, because my family will get to know the girl's family. It's a different culture. The involvement in our relationship will be less. So that was my understanding. That was my approach.
But then why only African? Why didn't you take it further and be like, okay, I don't marry what race I marry. I don't mind what race I marry. Why was it you wanted them to still be African?
I just preferred African women. I just preferred Black African women. My mother's an African woman, so my sisters are African women. So I preferred African women.
But your sisters are Nigerian, and you didn't prefer that. You were purposely trying to kind of get away from that, like, interconnection.
Yeah. I felt like I knew my people very well. And I needed to broaden my horizon in terms of, like, getting to know other tribes. It was a purposefully done thing. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I just stumbled onto... I was fortunate that you were Congolese, I must say, when I met you.
Yeah.
If you had been Nigerian... we would have had a problem.
Come on.
I would have, yeah. I would have been like,
you're sounding like a...
sorry, I can't help you.
No, I don't think you would have.
I would have.
I don't think you would have.
If you were Benin when I met you, you are my sister. You're practically my sister now. I would have been like, sorry, I love you, but like a sister. Yeah, can we continue proceeding like that? That's how it would have been. I'm honest.
That's not
it would have been a shame, really, but...
Wow.
Yeah.
This is really interesting because, and I think we've spoken about this before in the past, because we have asked each other why did we choose to date, you know, outside of our culture. And I think now it's a lot more common. You definitely get, you know, Nigerians and Jamaicans, you get Ghanaians with Nigerians, you get Congolese with Kenyans and Ugandans. So, we, you know, as Africans, we definitely mix a lot more. But there is still that stigma sometimes where it's kind of like, frowned upon sometimes, where it's kind of like, well, why did you meet a Nigerian girl and marry her? Why did you meet a Congolese guy and marry her?
I'm sure you experienced that.
I definitely experienced that.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's interesting because it's the same reason. But I think for me being a girl, I was very kind of like, I think in the beginning, in my early 20s, I was already with you, you know, but I was already thinking about, you know, who I'm going to marry when I was going to uni at 18. You know, I've said in previous podcast episodes that I was dating with the intention to meet the person I'm going to marry. So
While you were at university.
Yeah. Okay. So I met you very early on, starting uni. So it was literally a case of, as soon as I started uni, I was like, right, well, I'm probably going to end up dating someone. So I want to be really intentional about who I date. And I knew from years of watching Congolese relationships, I felt like I wanted someone with the same life experiences as me. So I wanted someone who grew up in London, you know, the South, South London represented, and had the same kind of life experience, was going to uni, all of that. But I was worried that if that person was Congolese, our culture, which had a lot of stuff that I would say is a bit sexist in a way, especially back then, you know, we're talking 20 years ago. There was a lot of excuses made for typical male behaviors that I felt like if I married a Congolese man, even if he was just like me and, you know, we had the same kind of experience, he could end up, you know, straying into behaviors.
They'll still get to him.
Yeah. I feel like
they'll still get to him. Yeah.
And it's kind of like what you said, the involvement, that kind of, oh, you know, this is what relationships are like. We could merge into becoming this kind of typical Congolese couple living a typical Congolese life in a typical Congolese marriage, with people's giving their opinions and expecting me to behave like a typical Congolese wife, which I wasn't. I was very adamant that I did not like some of the stuff that our culture kind of swept under the carpet or swept under the rug when it came to men.
Saying that, you may have to describe what a typical Congolese wife is. Just to point that out, because you mentioned that people are going to be thinking, what does she mean? Does a typical Congolese look like? You might have to give a high level.
Oh, child, I don't want to offend nobody.
Well, you mentioned it. We're talking about like behaviors, how the men behave, and the acceptance of the women.
Listen, these are my people, so I can't be. You know what's interesting as well? Obviously, I was quite young at the time, so I was an 18-year-old going into relationships. I did feel like I didn't want to replicate what I was seeing in my community. But remember, all I knew about relationships came from my community, so I thought a lot of that was Congolese behavior, Congolese men. After actually being in a relationship, growing up, seeing other relationships and having friends, having friends from different African countries, I realized that it's not so much Congolese men, because a lot of the things that I felt was linked to being Congolese, a lot of Nigerian girls will complain about the same thing about their men. So
it was men in general, not just Congolese men.
Well, which I later realized. But I say that to say I still feel like I made the right decision in that I did not want that family involvement. So there is that the same thing that you said. I felt like I want me and my husband to exist as me and my husband and bring our families into our relationship. I didn't want our families to kind of dictate our relationship or have like a really strong hold on our relationship. I wanted that distance. And I feel like with you being Nigerian, as much as you get on with my dad, you get on with my mum, you get on with my family, you know, there is a level of kind of otherness that you have because you're Nigerian that keeps it very distant, very cordial,
I agree.
and very much about the two of us. Like, well, good luck to them. I hope they work out. Whereas if we were a Congolese couple,
I'll be sitting down with the uncles and the dads and
on a regular
Jack Daniel, trying to speak to me about certain things. And that's what I did not want.
Child, you would be at the matangas. I mean, you go to the matangas. Matanga is like a Congolese wake that happens all through the night. If someone has passed away, you go to the grieving family's house and you're there for like most of the night. And you go to matangas with me if it's family members or close, people that I was close to or I'm close to the family. But it's not in the same way. When you come to the matanga, you're very much a Nigerian in Congolese space. Whereas if you were Congolese, you will be that Congolese guy with all the other. They would be literally speaking to you in Lingala. You would be,
I know.
They will almost pressure you to become a bit more
like them.
Typical.
Yeah.
And I say that to say I was also growing up in a time where there wasn't a lot of Congolese boys my age. My parents migrated to the UK in the early 1990s and there wasn't that many, London, the UK is an English-speaking country. Congo is a French colony, a Belgian colony, so they speak French. So in that sense, there wasn't a lot of young Congolese people for me to choose from when I was of age.
At that point
there's a lot more now.
There's a lot more now,
So I was kind of like, I need someone with that shared experience. And there wasn't that many Congolese boys at uni, unfortunately, when I was at uni. I don't even think I met one. Yeah. So, but like I said, there wasn't a lot of us. If I was in France, if I was in Belgium, Congolese men would have been all the rage. And it probably would have been very normal for me to like meet and marry a Congolese person. So that's my justification. Yeah. And when I say a typical Congolese wife, I mean, so I think I spoke about in the last episode when we're talking about the patriarchy, and I was talking about women being second place in their position in the relationship. And if you have a typical Congolese husband, he would really kind of harp on that. Like he's first place, he's first place, he's first place. And if you have a typical Congolese wife, she
knows her place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't know my place per se. Like I appreciate who I am in this relationship, but I did not want a husband that
will keep reminding you.
Yeah. Or
like make it
a thing, like a role that we had to play in a very kind of let's do what our forefathers did kind of way.
Literally.
Yeah. I wanted us to define our relationship for ourselves.
I guess that's the key thing. Defining the relationship for ourselves.
Yeah.
Being able to move away from family members being an influence in our which is some of the challenges, because sometimes if two people from the same cultures come together, there is a lot of involvement, because as I said before, it feels like one big family, which is a good thing, but there is there are negatives to that, because you cannot break away if things are not going well. You need your space, you need to work with your partner.
Yeah, sometimes it's just that.
Yes, yeah.
And also, we've spoken about keeping up with appearances, keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up appearances. And sometimes when you're in that circle where you're all from the same culture, you're all from the same background, you're all... Sometimes there is that tendency to want to keep up appearances.
Which quite a lot of relationships do.
Yeah, and I mean, you can have... You have that as well when you're not from the same culture. We're not saying this is exclusive, but there is that tendency when I think it makes the pressure stronger when you're like both Benin or you're both Congolese. It's like, come on, you can do this. Uphold the
flag.
Keep the flag flying high, and then you can. It can be a bit pressured, and you start to behave in the way that you think other people want you to.
And I think another thing is I don't believe you grow as much as you do when you are, with someone from another culture. I really think it keeps you suppressed. From what I have experienced, I think it keeps you. It's almost like the families they see, because you're the child from this family. You're a child from that family. Almost like they keep you as children. Like they never let go. It's always like, you guys will be fine. You guys. It's like it's never like they just don't leave you alone to just kind of work it out and be free. And I always get that, and I did my best to try and avoid that. And I said to myself that I'm not gonna get with someone from my country. So I will not have that influence. I will not have that tie. To say, we're Nigerian. When they start understanding that we're both Nigerians, so we should understand each other. We should know certain things that both Nigerians will know. So I wanted something totally different. So for me, African was my number one criteria. The next would have been anywhere from Africa. Preferably black.
Yeah. Preferably black with the same experience.
With the same experiences. That's very important. Same experience, with the same kind of similar cultural background. Because Congo and Nigeria, they're not that different.
No.
Since we've been together, I've found that the food you guys eat is quite similar to what we eat. So I know we're digressing a lot from the question. Because we're saying what the common challenges face.
Yeah, but I think we're talking about, first we were talking about like why we're dating. What happens when you're dating outside your culture a bit? We were talking about that a bit. I guess some people would say, well, that sounds very similar to some people that date outside their race, in the sense that, I want something really different and da-da-da. So it's like, well, why only stop at African? I know you said you have a preference, but are we saying date outside your race as well then? What are we saying about this kind of need for individuality in your relationship, to being left to kind of get on with it, not too much meddling. You know, someone could say, well, okay, why not go for the other race? Like, just take it way out there.
But you can. I mean, it's up to you, but you have to understand the challenges that comes with that, with doing that. And it's a lot more challenges than dating someone from outside your culture.
But within the same race.
Within the same race, yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So...
Yeah, because I think the difference is, and we're not saying that we're not advocating for dating outside your race. I think we're just trying to make the difference clear. When you're dating someone who's of the same race, and then us, you could also argue we were of the same culture because we're both African.
Yeah.
So there's
true.
that as
It's just a tribe.
Yeah.
That's different.
No, in a tribe?
Yeah. No, there's no tribe. It's country, isn't it?
Yeah, different nationalities.
Yeah, so it's nationality.
And actually, we're probably not the same culture per se. We're the same race. We're the same ethnicity because we're Black African and British, but we're not the same culture.
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's correct.
I would say.
Yeah.
We're not the same culture. And I think, and we definitely weren't the same nationality, but in a way we are the same nationality because we're both British, so we have that Britishness about us that is also the same. So I think our biggest difference in terms of our Nigerian and Congolese-ness is more cultural than I think nationality.
Yeah.
I think we're much more British when we go back to Congo, we go back to Nigeria, than we are Nigerian and Congolese.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the cultural. But in terms of race, what makes it different is that when you are the same ethnicity, you're the same race, there is a shared experience. So while you have differences, you have like a really big collective advantage in that most of the time you kind of have a very similar story.
Yeah.
Your family has similar experiences. There's just unspoken rules about certain things that we just know. Like, you know, I just know that, you know, there's going to be parties with lots of different people in both sides. And there's going to be loads of like, you know, when there's parties and there's family, I'm going to be with all the women. You're going to be with all the men.
Traditional stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there's just so many things, like even like the food that we eat and learning to cook his food and him learning to try, like embrace some of my food.
Yeah.
There's definitely, like you said, a lot of similarities. And because of that, while we have differences, we still have a real foundation that's similar. Whereas I think when you're dating outside your race, it's more challenging in the sense that your foundation can be very different, even if you're both British, you know, because how you actually perceive the world can be so different. If I am African and you are Scottish, for example, like there's just such a different way of like moving through the world.
Yeah.
In terms of race.
In terms of race, yeah.
You know, because there's already that prejudice factor that your family of Scottish heritage probably won't suffer from when it comes to, you know, Western cultures being predominantly white. You're not going to have that understanding of what I'm suffering through in terms of prejudice and racism. And that is a real all-encompassing thing when it comes to Black people and it comes to their experience in Western cultures.
Yeah.
So, and not just Western cultures, racism touches into African countries.
Yeah.
Racism touches Africans as well in Africa. So it's a real worldwide thing. And that baseline understanding not being there can be really challenging because you as a white Scottish person will have a lot to learn.
About the African culture.
Yeah. And you as an African person will have a lot to learn about the Scottish culture or the white person that you're dating's traditions and understanding. And just little things like being loud when you're all excited in a party or something may not translate, you know. So these are things that are like, you don't even think about it. They just come naturally. And with two Africans, it's very easy to kind of understand that. But to a completely different race, that can be seen as rude. You know, it could be seen as intimidating. It can be seen as
that's true.
impolite. Yeah, so there's a lot of
There is a lot.
Things like
There's
that.
a lot more. It's like a whole different layer of challenges.
So I don't think it's about not dating outside your race or not dating outside your culture, but I think it's about understanding what the differences are and the challenges. So like we said, some of the challenges are things like cultural differences, which we've touched on, you know, language. For example, you're dating outside your race or you're dating outside your culture and the family is speaking a different language and you're in the room and you don't understand that language.
Yeah.
That's
So
already
how
a
do you
challenge.
navigate that?
Yeah. The two of you probably need to have an understanding. With me and Frank, we've had that a few times, especially when I went to Nigeria and people speak in Benin. And you would always kind of lean over and tell me what
I would translate it to you. Yeah.
So,
and I'm almost versing in Lingala now. I think I understand Lingala.
oh, I know. And we do the same. We have like this thing where whenever Lingala's been spoken or Benin's been spoken, we always like translate for the other person and not just leave them and get engrossed in our conversation that is completely different language that our partner can't understand. And I do sometimes as well with languages. When I'm speaking to my mum, because I speak to my mum in Lingala, and if you're in the room, we're speaking in Lingala, but I would do some of my responding in English so that you can get the context. So you might not fully understand what I'm saying, but we're not just going to sit there and I'm not just going to respond to my mum everything in Lingala where you're just like, I don't know what they said. Like I would say some of my stuff.
That's good transparency. I like that because I can get the gist of what you guys are discussing rather than, you know, you coming off the phone and it's like, oh, you start telling me because it's hard. It's like, okay, are you telling the truth?
Yeah.
But when you respond,
do we have trust issues about Lingala?
No, we don't. It's kind of like if you're saying stuff like, right, mum, I'm going to get this to you. I'm like, okay, she's asking for something. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Or sometimes even my mum is there in person, I do that as well.
You do that. Do that.
So, because she understands English, or, you know. But
you do that. So another challenge is family and community acceptance. I think this is a big one because even for
intercultural,
sometimes it's just it's a big challenge. When, you know, you don't want that person to marry. Specific.
My family, I mean, how did our families take our culture?
My family were happy with you.
Yeah.
You know, I had made my decision. I told them my decision is final. Yeah, you understand?
Oh, child.
I tell you what I want, you tell me.
Well, Frank is the oldest. He's the oldest boy. You know, he's the oldest.
It wasn't up for discussion. They loved who you were and they accepted you straight away. So there wasn't an issue with that. So I've never had like a pushback and say, oh, but she's Congolese.
But when I went to Nigeria, we had our traditional Benin wedding.
To Nigeria,
although I had
there was a shock. People were shocked that, oh, you had married, because obviously they were expecting me to marry a Benin girl.
Yeah. I remember feeling quite bad, like, oh, sorry. And then it kind of made me think about interracial relationships, like how you know, because you get that a lot in the Black community sometimes where, you know, someone's married to a white person and it's like, you married a white person. It's becoming a lot less like that now.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was growing up, you know, if someone had a partner that was white, it was a big deal. Like, oh, they're not married to a Black person. And now it's a bit better. But now going to Benin, you know, going to Nigeria, I felt that a bit where I was kind of, I experienced a bit of that when people are like, oh, she's Congolese. I felt a bit like,
shocked.
I'm sorry, I'm not Nigerian. But I felt that energy of like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because what they're used to is a Benin man marries a Benin woman. That was standard to them, but they don't realize that obviously living in Europe, you know, there's...
Yeah, in London, there's loads of Africans
African
and our commonalities, African
merged together, like, you know, so you could end up with a Kenyan.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they're shocked.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in London, it's more like, are you African?
Yeah.
We have that kind of African ties, and then there's the Black, and then, you know, it's like that. For me, it was kind of like a ranking. Are you from South? Are you South London first, right? I don't know. I just wanted a South London guy who grew up in South and understood South London ways. And then it was like, okay, you're from London. And then it's like, okay, are you black? Because that was a thing for me as well. Like I wanted to marry someone who was black because it was all about the shared experience. So it's like, are you black? And then it's like, are you African? Yeah. So there was like, that's like a factor. But whereas in Africa, it's like in Congo, for example, it's not going to be, are you Congolese? Because that's pretty much a standard. It'll be, are you Mukongo, are you Mugala, which is all the different tribes. And the same in Nigeria. It's like, is she Benin?
Yeah.
So we had to kind of overcome that. But the family acceptance thing on my side, I think was a bit more, it was weird because my dad is, one of the elder men, right, in his family. He's one of the older boys. And my dad did not express to me any kind of apprehension about me marrying a Nigerian. I remember he expressed curiosity. Like when me and him spoke, he was like, oh, so he's Nigerian, okay. What part of Nigeria? And I told him, he's Benin. He's like, oh, they're lovely people. And, because we lived in Nigeria for a very short amount of time before we came to the UK when I was very, very young. I was probably about 3 or 4 years old. And so he knew Nigerians. He was in Lagos for a long time, for a little bit with us. And so he was very nice about it. I expected my dad to be a bit, But I later heard through the aunties and my mum and stuff that he was initially like, what? Why is she not marrying a Congolese? Da, da, da. But my dad is a very like free thinker. He's very open-minded. So he didn't bring that energy to me. And he just asked me a few questions about you. And then he was cool. And then because he's the oldest, I think, some of my uncles, I heard a few whispers through the grapevine. They weren't like too happy with it. But he's the oldest. And he was one of the oldest. And he was like, it is what it is, my daughter. That's who she's marrying. That's it. So I didn't get much pushback from my family. And then obviously all the women in my family really liked you. So I didn't have any pushback at all. But sometimes family and community acceptance is a big thing. And I think it's more of a big thing if we're honest when you're not from the same race. Because
definitely
people have such prejudices against different race.
And another thing, I think it's easier to push through if you are from the same ethnicity. Than if you're a different race. Because if there isn't any acceptance by the family, it's very hard to get past that. Because family is important. We all know family is important. So if the acceptance is not there, it's you and your partner against the family. Literally. And that's not a good way to start
off. And so it's like you're dealing with that disapproval or stereotypes from other people, and that can really put a strain on your relationship. It can really put a strain on your relationship. And like I said, we're not in an interracial relationship. We're not an interracial couple, but we've seen interracial relationships and we know interracial couples, and everybody knows that this is something that can be hard to deal with. So I think if you are dating someone outside your race, expect that there might be that pushback and that prejudice and that disapproval, and really talk about it beforehand and think about how you're going to navigate it, how you're going to kind of support each other. And I think like set up some ground rules, what can the other person do to show you that they're uncomfortable with the situation, or things like that.
We'll talk about all the
tactics, but that could be an issue. What other challenges?
We've spoken about communication and language. We having different languages, and it was great that we both grew up in South London. We understood each other. We had that understanding, that base already, not just on that we're both African, but also we're both from South London.
And I think communication language is major. Because it is us both having the same kind of dialect, the same slang, the same life experience. We could,
we can just talk for hours and just both get each other and knew where each other was coming from.
And so I think that's sometimes even more important than being from the same. You could be from the same race, the same ethnicity, the same culture, but you're from different countries, different nationalities, and you won't have this communication and language flow.
That's true.
So you can have a Nigerian from the UK born and raised versus a Nigerian in Nigeria who grew up in Lagos, you are not going to have the same dialect, the same language, the same way of speaking.
Even the same understanding.
Yeah. And so, you're more likely to have communication and language barriers or issues, the further down you get, right? So if it's a race thing, that could be hard. But I think if it's a race thing, but you have the same nationality and the same kind of like, you're both from the same area, like you're both from Birmingham or whatnot, you can skip over the race thing because that communication and language bit, you're probably not going to have it as an issue.
That's true.
But if you don't have that, and if you're going down the line, it's like you're not the same race, you're not the same ethnicity, you're not the same culture, you're not the same nationality. You're not the same, that language and communication becomes harder and harder and more challenging. And I think you then have to be aware of that and really figure out, okay, let's develop a language within our own way of speaking.
I agree.
Yeah. And lastly, what else did we put down as a challenge?
Yeah, different beliefs and values. Yeah, this is important, especially
that part.
Beliefs.
If you don't have the same beliefs,
that's another barrier. Imagine different race, different culture, different beliefs. It's like you're just adding.
You're adding blocks. It's like you're raising the hurdle higher. Because if your hurdle's quite low, it's like you could jump over that. You're running your race, you jump over the hurdles. But if it's more and more, then the higher your hurdle gets, the higher the likelihood that you will not be able to jump the hurdle. And we sound a bit negative.
No, we're not. We're just being open and honest about it. Like, you have to be realistic about certain things, and this is one of it.
I think beliefs are core. Yeah. Frank and I, when we met, we were both considered ourselves to be Christians. You were quite, you were so cute. You were a devout Catholic. With your rosary, he used to say his rosary prayers, and you had your rosary beads and stuff. And you kind of reintroduced me, like I've said before, to a religion that was always part of my childhood. Like my grandmother, my great grandmother were Catholics, and I was baptized a Catholic, so I knew a lot about Catholicism, but I just never practiced properly. And when we met, we already had that baseline understanding that we had the same belief, and that was good because it gave us the same kind of values, the same kind of religious practices. So we prayed a bit differently, but once I understood how you prayed and I asked you questions about the rosary and stuff, I was able to really pick that up because it was within my same sphere.
That's true.
But when you don't have that, when you have different beliefs and values, you can really find it hard to find common ground.
It is. Things can fall apart when there are two separate beliefs, because that's where families will hone in on the actual, disapproval of the relationship. Because it's like, that just gives them more ammunition to say, no, this is not the right person for you.
They don't believe in what we believe in. So for sure. Yes. And like we're saying with everything here, the further away you are from each other on that kind of nationality, culture, ethnicity, race, the more likely it is for you to have a different belief system.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah. So it's like you have to factor that in as well. I really kind of think of that. But in terms of us being from different cultures, what would we say is like our top challenge? What is the hardest thing about being married to a Congolese girl for you?
I don't think there's any.
There's something there. There is one thing that you can say, being married to a Congolese girl.
Married now. Well, your people, your colorful dresses. I don't know. I just can't deal with them. Like, this was sapé and
the sap.
The sap.
You have an issue with the sap? Congolese.
Shout out to all the sapés out there. But being married to you guys,
okay, what Frank is referring to?
I wouldn't say is a challenge. I would say is interesting. Going to Congolese parties and whatnot. I often go to these parties feeling underdressed. Like, I feel like, wow, these guys are colorful. Like, damn.
Okay, what Frank is referring to, which is called the sap, or sapé is that Congolese people take their dressing really seriously. They are very creative and out there. I'm talking lime green and purple clothes.
Colors of the rainbow.
Hats, men wearing skirts. They're all... Yeah. It's all very about dressing. Dressing to impress and sometimes dressing to shock. That's Congolese people.
And I'm often shocked. Yeah.
So that's your thing, the sap. You got issues with the sap?
Okay, it's not an issue.
That's the
most like prominent thing that I was like, wow, that was taken by. Because I was keen to learn more about your culture. I was keen to learn about your food, and whatnot, and the language you guys spoke. So I don't think for me there wasn't any challenges that I faced. Like I think because we had that base, both grew up in South London, both African. I thought when we got together, it just flowed. Like the conversation. It's like you were just like I knew you for time. Like that's how it felt. For time. You get
very South London word.
Time. Like
Right.
Long take. Yeah. That's it. I didn't feel like I needed to push to get to know more. It was
or to change yourself.
Exactly.
Kind of.
It was more. It was more about getting to know you, the person, rather than your culture. It felt like I already had the base
of who I was.
Yeah. So what about you? What was there was a lot.
I don't want to offend the in-laws.
It's fine.
Hardest thing about dating a Nigerian guy, I think in terms of your culture, what I find the hardest, I would say, is the respect levels.
It's too much.
Yeah, Nigerians are big on displays of respect, which is not a thing with Congolese. I'm not saying Congolese people expect you to disrespect your elders. That's not even it. But there is no any like expected actions to display respect. When it comes to Congolese people, it's papa, mama, tonton, which is uncle, tantine, auntie. That's about it. You're not really going to get much else. It's like, what do you call them? Don't talk over them when they're speaking. That kind of minor stuff. But with Nigerians, there was this thing about you curtsy or you... There's a way you speak with the elders or the way you greet an elder, the way you act around them.
You kind of like...
It's like a continuous...
You kind of like kneel, but not fully get into the ground.
Yeah.
It's kind of like while you greet them.
Yeah. So that was really hard for me to... And that is probably still today the hardest thing because I never know... Am I being respectful enough?
Yeah.
How much more should I be doing? Is this enough? Should I call you auntie? Should I call you, it's very like, I'm not sure because it's almost like they're always watching your respect levels. And I'm like, I don't know. Because
especially once they know that you're not Nigerian.
Oh, dear.
They want to see how you react or how you respond to them.
Yeah, and that's a bit nerve-wracking because there's a lot of different people I encounter. And in Congolese tradition, I would say amongst Congolese, or the way we are now as Congolese, because maybe it was different in the past, like years and years ago, but Congolese people are very personable, even with their elders. Like, they're very affectionate, or they're very, like, the more jokey you are with your uncle, the more kind of like, they laugh a lot, they joke a lot, they play a lot, they banter a lot. Yeah, so it's more relaxed. Serious, So if I want to show like affection towards an elder, I will probably say something jokey or something funny around them, and they'll be like, you're so this, that, and we'll joke. Yeah. But that's not a thing with Nigerians.
No. That's disrespectful.
Yeah.
You'll get flogged.
This is different. That's not. That is so different. And I remember like when I met your dad, I wanted to like hug him. Yeah. And to like...
Even I don't even hug him. Like, let you hug him.
I was like trying to be around him like how I would be around like my uncles that I love dearly. So it's like I would want to put my arm around him. Hi, Dad. And he's like, why
are you touching me? You should be bowing to me.
Oh, Lord.
So, that was different.
So that's that. But he didn't say that. Your dad was lovely.
No, he didn't say that. He didn't say that,
but yeah, he understood that I was a foreign girl.
Yeah.
But that's the hardest thing because I never want to be rude and I don't want to be disrespectful, but I never know
I know. But I do try to educate you. I do try to tell you, okay, that's the one that you bow to. That's the one you just say hello. That's the one you don't even bother making eye contact.
Yeah, especially when I speak to your grandma on the front, I'm like, Koyo. I'm like, I don't know what to say.
Granny's cool though. She's just like, yeah. How are you?
Yeah, he is lovely. But sometimes when I do speak to her, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to run and hide because I don't really know. I feel like she's so gross. She's your mom's mom. And I'm like, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
So it can be nerve-wracking. But yeah, that's the hardest part, I would say.
That's really good. At least there isn't like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Nah. I mean, okay, so on another tip,
what about our drive, our yearning to get degrees?
What about? I don't even take you guys seriously on that. You guys in your 600 degrees.
We love education now. We love to learn.
What you guys love is status. You love titles.
Not everybody.
You love titles and status.
We love to learn. We love progress.
I'm teasing you. Yeah, Nigerians love a good progress. Do not try to stop their progress.
We're friends with progress.
Okay, so what are the advantages and disadvantages of intercultural and interracial relationships? So we said some of the challenges that we face.
Yeah.
But I think you touched on some of the advantages, like that kind of merging, of bringing two cultures together. Like a freshness, like a different way of looking at things.
The way I look at it, it's like a bowl of fruit. Like when you get strawberries, grapes, bananas, it becomes very colorful. It becomes even more tasty. So when you get Nigerians, Congolese, that mixture, like sweet bowl of fruit. Anyway,
I like it. Yeah.
Don't mind me.
Don't mind. No, but it's a cultural exchange.
Yeah, it's a cultural exchange,
and that could be so nice. I mean, that's definitely an advantage because for me, one thing I've really gotten into, and I don't know if I would have gotten into it anyway because it's become a thing in London, but it's Nigerian music and like Afro beats and I love.
You got on it from time ago, even before some people started clocking onto it. You were already like.
Yeah, but I feel like how much of that is actually me.
I think
being married to a Nigerian and just the fact that Afro beats is all the rage, and
I think it's a lot because you would have come into it much later, but you were
I was
already in the mix already.
Yeah, so I loved your music. I also love your dress senses as well. Like I love what the men wear. I love what the women wear. I love your use of colors, which I actually found to be really close to my heart in terms of being Congolese. Nigerians wear a lot of colorful stuff, but they wear one color. Like it'll be like green and gold, or do you know what I mean?
You're not trying to rival the rainbow.
Yeah, and it's all traditional wear, whereas we'll be wearing yellow trousers
to work and everything. Yeah.
Not to work. Come with it, and I don't do this, but yes.
So cultural exchange, and that goes for interracial as well.
Yeah, that's something you could look forward to in that.
And them together.
And that's so cool. I think some of the most beautiful weddings I've seen, some of them are like interracial or intercultural, and it's nice to just see like one culture be represented and another culture be represented, and that coming together under love is like beautiful. So the cultural exchange is a good advantage. What else? It's an advantage in our opinion.
Broaden perspective. I must say, being with you, it has encouraged me to learn more about other African countries and other, cultural people. Sorry, and other like other cultures.
Yeah.
So it's definitely
it's helped.
It's helped. Yeah.
And that really helps to challenge like biases, stereotypes. It kind of promotes open-mindedness, exploring, understanding, compassion. So it really helps with that kind of stuff as well. When you date someone outside of the norm of what you grew up in and what you're used to, it really does challenge your stereotypes. When you're not of a certain culture, you're going to hear stuff and you're going to have stereotypes. And stereotypes are so crap, because there's just so many different people in the world that it's ridiculous. Like you're not always going to behave in the same way that people think you will. True. And so I was kind of the perception, even though I was really young, that I don't really want to date a Nigerian guy. So meeting you and you being Nigerian, I'm just glad I was open-minded enough to not let that stereotype like stop me from dating you. But I did have a preconceived notion, and you were just nothing.
You would have missed out. No, that would have been your loss. Oh.
No, sorry.
So you're lucky.
I never really let stereotypes affect how I treat people. I might know of it and be like, oh, ideally. But then when I met you, I still took you as a human being and got to know you as you.
No, demon.
Oh, stop
so
it.
Nice.
No,
that's nice.
And
yeah,
and you were lovely. You just were totally different from what I expected. Okay, so disadvantages, I think we've touched on.
I think we've covered the disadvantages, the communication challenges, the cultural differences and conflicts.
The approval,
the different beliefs, and
there could be quite a bit. The challenges were disadvantages. How does cultural background influence communication and understanding in a relationship? I mean, I think we could cover this in a bit more detail in the sense of perception and interpretation. So, like we said, like I was talking about, being in Nigeria and the way I kind of interact with, elders versus how they would in Nigeria. It's really important to try and give your partner as much context as you can. And
explain
how things will be perceived because it is so easily done. But at the same time, you've got to have grace for each other.
True.
If the other person does not behave in the way that you would expect, or they do something that you think is like terrible in your culture, you have to have that understanding that they're not like you and talk.
Yeah.
I think cultural background also influences norms, like we said, norms and values. So things like how you express emotions, how you show respect, we spoke about. But like,
that's true.
One thing about you, and I think that is quite common in Nigerian culture, is like a repressing of emotions. But
we're not well, sorry if this is gonna come across as some Nigerians out there as a shock, but we're not taught to express ourselves as much. When I met you, you were very expressive. That was different for me. That was quite refreshing, but at the same time, it was, it took me a while to understand it. Because I was quite reserved.
Absolutely. So there's going to be that barrier as well in terms of, okay, how do you guys deal with your emotions? How do you kind of express when you're unhappy about stuff? And how do you get through conflict?
Yes. Yeah, that will vary.
So in terms of marriage and raising children, how does our intercultural relationship fare with that?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think there's been any impact though, because this is what we said at the beginning. Because we're both from two different cultures, we've been able to raise our kids,
without too much outside involvement.
Even our marriage, we've been able to navigate our way through without any involvement. So I do feel like
it's just you and me.
It's just you and me.
Yeah, it's not. We've worked.
Well, I mean, we have support of our family, but we've worked things out ourselves. We've done things our way. Put it that way. Everything we have done it our way. We have not done it with family input or family influences and stuff. We've just done it, the Frank and Nuria way. So this is an interesting question, but I don't think
you don't think it's affected.
I don't think it's affected us, but it could be a case where if we were both from the same culture, that would have been different.
Feeling the pressure to do things a certain way, like you said.
Yes.
But I think in terms of our marriage, being from a different culture has impacted our relationship, and it has impacted our marriage in that because we haven't had as much involvement from our families, we've had to really try and like make it work by looking through doing our own research into what makes a marriage work and all of that stuff. Whereas if we were from the same culture, there's so many things that we've dealt with in our relationship, in our marriage, that we probably would have sat down with elders like how many times?
That's true.
Or like we would have had a lot more like involvement from your mum and my mum and stuff like that. Or complain to them a lot more about stuff. Whereas it's almost like when you're married to someone who's not of the same culture or maybe even the same race, sometimes I feel like people expect you to fail more so than when you're the same. And I think because of that, it's almost like they just let you get on with it. And that's kind of what we wanted. But there is the downside in that they let you get on with it because they're already like, how are they going to work? Are they really going to work? Let's see. And so because of that, it's pushed us closer together because we like, wow, we need to figure this out. And we don't always have that, involvement.
And I do think because we haven't been going to elders and going to uncles and aunties and stuff for advice, like you said, we have done our own research. We've read books on relationships. We've been able to figure things out just by regularly communicating and trying to understand each other. An example of this is that obviously the 5 love languages
that we spoke about.
Just reading that gives you a different view of marriage. Yeah, a different view of marriage. For me, I think that is a blessing because I think if we had gone the other way in terms of like sitting down with elders, we would have been given a traditional approach, traditional solution, which doesn't often work.
Yeah, because they've been there, done that. It's been tried, tested, and failed. No,
not all the time, but most of the time. Tried, tested, so why would I want that? It's like, why would I come for that advice? No, I don't need that. I would do my own thing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I say that it's, for me,
it's a positive in a way. Yeah, but even in that sense, that it's made us more determined to make our marriage work. We know we're not the same culture. We know that we've got things we need to work on in terms of differences. But because of that, we really stick to how much we love each other and we put in the work.
And I'll tell you this. You probably don't even know this, but I'll tell you this, right? I only remember that we're from 2 different cultures when your mom calls. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I forget that we're from 2 different cultures.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes it's like we just obviously we're doing our everyday life. We're just living our life and stuff. And it's kind of like it's just me and Nuria. We've got our 2 kids and blah, 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 blah. And then your mom calls and then you start speaking Lingala. I'm like, oh yeah, she's Congolese. Okay, carry on, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's so
because
true.
My mom, when I speak to my mom, she speaks English to me, so it's kind of like she blends in and kind of just flows.
Yeah.
But then Coco comes in and be like, yeah. I was like, oh yeah, she's Congolese. I'm like, okay.
And the funny thing is, I don't speak English with my mom. I speak Lingala with her, but I speak English with my dad. Yeah. So my dad really blends into our
That's another thing.
As well.
When your dad calls you, I feel exactly the same way when my mom calls me.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, nothing to see here.
Nothing changes.
Until Coco comes in, and then it's like, oh.
Coco brings the Congo. Yeah, my mom brings the Congo. And I love that though, because she brings that to the kids as well. There is that, Ellie's like, oh, you're speaking language again. There's the difference there that she brings into it.
Yeah. She definitely brings the different dynamic to our relationship.
Yeah. It's true. My mom is like the reminder that I'm Congolese.
Yeah, for me.
For sure. But that's hilarious. But yes, I think that's probably the biggest effect that it's had on our intercultural relationship. And I think when it comes to raising children, there is a difference in that, they have such a mixture of Africanness that it's interesting. Like they know Congolese words, they know Benin words. Yeah. They eat different types of food and guavi.
Variety.
Yeah. Guavi leans a lot more to like Nigerian food, whereas Elise leans more to like Congolese food. Yeah. So it's interesting to see the different elements of our culture within them, and even sometimes in their behavior. But I don't even know if it's Congolese or Nigerian per se. But I think Ellie's behaves more like a Congolese girl, and Guav behaves more like a Nigerian boy, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. We say that, but who knows? Ellie's very hyperactive and high energy. She loves singing and dancing.
She loves dancing. She loves colourful stuff. She loves colourful clothes. And Guav is just
colourful clothes.
Very calm, very like into his books.
Yeah, he's all about academic. He wants his degree. He wants his title. I can't. But also, I think we're very fortunate in that we haven't had many other issues in terms of like our intercultural relationship. And like I said, a lot of that is because we are the same ethnicity, we're the same race. So there is definitely going to be something there around shared experiences. And that really helps us. And also the way we approach our marriage is very united. The way we approach raising our kids is very united. Like we make the decisions on what happens with our kids, and we've always been like that about it. So I think our approach has helped for our cultures to not really get intertwined, to get in the mix when it comes to raising our kids.
And also, I think they get the picture. Like both family understand that Frank and Nuria, they've got this. They're doing this their way. We just have to respect them. I think it's been like that for years. So
So we've got some tips and takeaways for navigating marriage or relationships that cross culture or race. All of this will apply to your culture. All of it can be applied to race as well. So we're just going to use that interchangeably. It all applies to dating people from those differences. And I guess it's the same if you're thinking about ethnicity and even like nationality or different walk of life. You know, because like we said, you could be the same race, ethnicity, culture, and just be from a completely different part of the world and just live a very different life.
Yeah.
So the first one is be open-minded. If you are looking to date someone that has any of those kind of categorical differences, you need to be open-minded. There's no point going into a relationship with someone with a very different lived experience from you, expecting them to think the way you do, or expecting them to, you know, want the same things that you want. You need to really be a lot more about understanding the way they think, understanding who they are and loving them and growing in togetherness. So you need to be open-minded.
Important, The second one would be respect your own culture or race. This is an important one.
It's an important one for you. You do talk about this a lot.
I do. And the reason for that is that just because you want to date outside of your culture or outside of your race does not mean you have to belittle the women or men from your race or from your culture. You know,
sure.
I have to hold myself to that because what I said earlier on at the beginning of this podcast, I would not date a Nigerian.
Yeah, but you explained why. You weren't like, I don't like Nigerian girls or whatever.
No,
it was all about...
It was all about like the interplay, the dynamics, you know, family getting involved. It wasn't because I did not like Nigerian girls.
And the same thing with me as well, where I was very much like, I didn't want to date a Congolese guy, but it wasn't about Congolese guys. It's because of the life that I felt we were going to end up living because of the interconnections between the families and our culture and how much influence it would have. So that's very different from, you know, feeling like all Nigerian girls are like this. Or
that's not what we're saying. That's not what we've said. Another thing is, you know, obviously dating outside of your race. You know, I don't have any issues with that. When you do that, my advice would be stay in your lane.
Wow. Okay, explain it then. What do you mean by stay in your lane?
Just because you've had... Because the reason why I'm saying this because I have...
Give the context, give the background. Why are you saying this?
I've heard a few men growing up, you know, belittling black women because they are dating outside their race. So I've heard in the past, it's better to date a white woman than a black woman. Now, you may have had one or two bad apples in your time, but that does not mean that all black women are bad, right? So just because you've been with one or two bad apples does not mean that, you know, you then belittle your whole race because you're now dating outside of your race. Your conversation, your point of opinion should be about what race you are dating. You should not refer back to, I don't, you know, this is why I date white women. I don't date black women because black women are X, Y, Z. I think that needs to stop because that's...
I mean, some people would say, well, if you date black women, nobody stops you from saying what you love about black women. What's wrong with someone who dates white women saying, white men saying what they love about them?
Yeah, and I get that, but I don't make any reference to other race.
Okay,
I only say what I love about the women that I date or the women that I'm married to, the color that I'm married to. So I can only give my opinion on rather the positive side of things rather than looking back and say, well, this is the reason why I like this because I don't like that, that needs to stop.
Date who you want and fall in love with whoever
you want,
loves you.
Yeah.
But definitely respect your own race, your own culture. And it's not just black. We are talking about it from a black perspective because
it cuts across all race.
It cuts across all races. I don't think if you're an Indian guy, you're dating a black woman or you're dating a white woman and then you're disparaging Indian women. I don't think they'll take very kindly to that. Just date who you're dating and keep it moving. There's no need for you to kind of make reference to your race or your culture in a negative light.
Because the way I see it, I feel like when you take that leap, right, you were no longer qualified to make comments about, if that makes sense, right? You are no longer qualified because you are not in a relationship with an Indian person or with a black woman.
And the problem is as well, a lot of the times when we make comments like that, they're just sweeping judgment comments that are not based on anything. Because you haven't dated all the black men, you haven't dated all the black women, you haven't dated all the white women. So it's like for you to kind of have this sweeping judgment of a group of people, it's kind of ignorant.
Very.
But at the same time, I say that to say there are stereotypes and things like that we have to check ourselves on. And like I was saying, the stereotype that made me feel like, oh, do I really want to marry a Nigerian? Do I really want to date a Nigerian?
Yeah.
My way of checking myself on that was I never allowed myself to encounter a Nigerian guy and just write him off for being Nigerian. And to be honest, even though I felt what I felt about dating or marrying an actual Congolese guy, because I knew that there's going to be family dynamics there that I just didn't want. If I had actually met a Congolese guy who I actually got on really well with and was developing into a relationship, I don't think I would have allowed that to kind of write him off either.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. We can have our preferences, but a preference should remain a preference, right? I never had this, I don't date.
Yeah.
Because that's not a preference. That's like a rule.
Like a rule, yeah.
A preference should be something that, I would prefer to date an African guy, but I'm going to date whoever comes along that really fits in with my personality and that I get on with and who I can see myself building with. So in saying that, that's what we mean by respect your own culture and race. Like, keep your opinions about your culture and race very neutral, because otherwise you can come across as very ignorant and very self-hating as well. And that's across the board, because I'm sure this doesn't just happen with black people, but it's definitely something that we've seen in our community.
Yes.
And it's very disheartening.
It needs to stop.
Yeah, and I know you put this on this list because you really don't like that aspect of interracial,
if there's one high level message is that needs to stop for me. Yeah, it needs to stop.
Yeah,
because it's damaging.
Oh, we don't really talk about our community like that, do we? But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about us as a community per se. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, you don't like to hear it as a black man because it probably feels like they're talking for all black men. And
yes,
it's like,
and
no, you're not talking
they're
for
not,
me.
not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
So, yes, the next one would be communicate and discuss expectations. We mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
Regular communication and expectations as well, knowing what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. Discuss what your beliefs and values are from the get-go, what you're kind of expecting. And we did a whole podcast on your standards, expectations, and boundaries and stuff. So this is kind of like akin to that, especially if you're going to date someone outside of your culture or outside of your race. There's definitely going to be that challenge of understanding what you expect from each other. So it's even more important to kind of make sure that you have that down packed, just to reduce the likelihood of the relationship not working out. Number 4, educate yourself. Learn about your partner's culture and history.
Important.
Read books, watch documentaries.
Yeah. This is really important.
Yeah, because you need to gain a deeper understanding about their culture, especially if you're married and you plan to have children or you have children. You know, you can't be ignorant about each other's culture. We often watch loads of documentaries about like Congo and Nigeria. Like, we've watched so many things.
We do.
About each other's countries.
We're still learning about each other's culture as we progress through life. So
we still do all that.
The next one is respect and celebrate differences between yourselves. Yeah, this is important between you. Yeah, so this is important. And I said it earlier on about, getting to know your culture, celebrating it, enjoying the food that you guys have.
Yeah, trying the food.
Trying different things and...
Yeah, appreciate the fact that you have unique traditions, you have unique customs, you have different perspective and, explore what that means. And this is not just about interracial or intercultural. Remember what we were saying about even differences in terms of where in the world you are from, even when you're from the same culture, right?
That's true.
It's really important, even if you're going to date someone or marry someone who predominantly grew up in, I don't know, Uganda and you grew up in the States or something, there's definitely going to be nationality differences there, even if you're both Ugandan or, so you have to understand that you're coming at the world from different perspectives and you're going to have differences. You can both be Ghanaian and you have different walks of life. You need to respect and celebrate those differences between you and don't see them as a hindrance. Because if you do, if you see them as a negative, right, then why are you even together? You need to start viewing them as positives and what can you learn from each other when you have those differences and what can you kind of embrace and what can you take forward, etc.
That's true.
Number 6, we've only got 8, so...
Yeah. So number 6, challenges and stereotypes. Yeah, so this is about standing up against prejudice or ignorance, supporting each other through the relationship, through a difficult situation that you may face.
Addressing challenges that may arise externally and really like trying to make sure that you tackle and address stereotypes, and when people kind of challenge you as a couple, you need to be able to stand up for your relationship, for each other.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's another one. Trust and flexibility. So number 7 is all about understanding that misunderstandings may occur due to cultural differences and approach these situations with patience and empathy. So you need to trust each other, trust that you love each other. That's the whole reason why you're together. Give each other that benefit of the doubt, and approach misunderstandings with a lot more patience because you're going to have those differences. You're more likely to have those differences. There's already those differences in any relationship. So just expect it to potentially be amplified because there's more chance of misunderstanding.
That's true.
I do love to waffle on, isn't it?
That's your speciality. 8th one is embrace compromise. This is a good one.
Yeah.
And understanding that compromise is an integral part of a successful relationship. So it's important that you and your partner work together.
Yeah.
To try and iron out any issues that may arise, especially even if it's the cultural thing, interracial thing, you still need to work together to create that value that you, like we said earlier on, the discussion that we had, our own values, not having that outside influences, but building that core value between the two of us.
That's so true. And I think in terms of compromise, sometimes I struggle with the word compromise because I'm like,
you shouldn't have to compromise. Is that what you're thinking? You're not serious.
No. It's not that I'm thinking you shouldn't have to compromise. But I don't know, maybe it's a dictionary definition issue. Because compromise is when you try and meet each other halfway. And, So, I think you're right. You should compromise.
Because if you're from 2 different cultures, we'll compromise. We'll come together. It's not like we do things the Nigerian way all the time. So you've got to compromise that. You're going to want to do certain things differently. I'm going to want to do certain things differently. So that's compromise.
Let's just look up the dictionary definition of compromise just so that I can, So compromise.
An agreement or settlement of a dispute.
Carry on. An agreement or settlement of a dispute
that is reached by each side making concessions. The expedient acceptance of standards that are lower than is desirable.
So that is probably where I'm using the second definition.
Yes.
The expedient acceptance of standards that are lower than is desirable.
Compromising, that's settling.
So sometimes I'm kind of... And another definition says settle a dispute by mutual concession. And then the second one is expediently accept standards that are lower than is desirable. So I think sometimes it depends on which way you're talking about compromise, because sometimes I think compromise, accept standards that are lower than what you want. I don't like that. But to reach an agreement by making a concession makes a lot more sense. Never accept standards that are lower than desirable.
No, we've said that before.
So I think sometimes compromise, if I'm going by the second definition, I can be a bit, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like try and reach a mutual understanding or a mutual agreement, which is a compromise. So, it's just wordplay here. Sometimes I struggle with that word. And not because I don't compromise, because I'm a very compromising wife, am I not?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You've learned to be.
I do try to find common ground.
You do.
I'm all about common ground.
It's true.
But I don't see that as compromising. I don't see that as accepting a lower standard. No. I see that as reaching an agreement. I don't feel like I'm kind of lost out.
You've not you've not lost out. So I agree.
So that's our 8 tips. I mean, how would we say we demonstrate? Do we think we do all of this in our marriage? Are we open-minded, respect our own culture and race? Do we communicate and discuss expectations? Do we educate ourselves of each other's culture? Do we respect and celebrate differences between us? Do we challenge stereotypes? And do we trust?
So we're flexible.
And embrace compromise?
I think we do all of that. That's why I've put them down there. I think we do all of that. You have to.
Which area would you say we need to work more on?
I think we're still working on the compromising bit.
Clearly, since I have issues.
We're still growing with it. I mean, we're still working on it. Even I'm working on it too. So I think that's where we're working on it.
There's always going to be parts of you that continue to work on compromising. Because it's not easy.
It's not easy because we're in this marriage, but at the same time we're growing
as individuals.
So we have to keep learning about each other and coming to a compromise on things. So.
But one thing about the way me and you compromise is we try to go for each other's happiness. So we don't just compromise so that we can move forward. We compromise in a way that we're trying to make sure there's happy.
So we aim for the happiness of the other.
Not just I don't get what I want, but you don't get what you want either. No, we're not really like that. It's not like, nobody's going to get what they want. It's more about, okay, how can we ensure the happiness of each other? How can we facilitate each other to be happy in this relationship? And we put the happiness first.
I agree.
As opposed to winning battles or, moving forward from a stalemate.
True.
If we're not both happy, then it's not successful compromise.
It hasn't been addressed. Put it that way. I agree.
You're going to do the outro today, aren't you?
I am. So
go ahead.
So that's it, guys. You've heard our views about dating someone from a different culture or race. We've given you our experiences. We've gone through some of the advantages and disadvantages of you may encounter. We don't have any issues with intercultural or interracial relationships, but we do think you have to show respect to your culture or your race. While you embark on that journey.
We really hope you tune into the next episode where we will be discussing side chicks, side men, and cheating. We're going there.
It's going to be a good one,
We're going there on the next one. It's going to be crazy, right?
It's going to be a mad
It's going to be a mad thing. No, I'm joking. But we're finally going to do side chicks, side men, and cheating. And I think there's been a lot going on in the media recently with
all the side chicks and all the side men. Make sure you tune in next week. Okay.
And the cheers.
And the cheers. We'll be talking about you guys.
No, I can't. Thank you for hanging out with us, and we'll speak to you on the next one.
Bye.